The scent of melted cheese and rich tomato sauce wafted from the lasagna in front of me, but I had lost my appetite. Mom had called me home tonight, saying the family needed a nice dinner together after months apart. I had foolishly believed it would be a warm, nostalgic evening, one that reminded me of better days. But now, sitting at this polished oak table, in the house I once called home, I felt like nothing more than a stranger. Just so we're clear, Ethan, my younger brother, leaned forward, his tone casual but laced with arrogance. We wanted to tell you now, so there's no confusion later. Everything Mom and Dad own, the house, the lake cottage, is going to us. I blinked, unsure if I had heard him correctly. His words hit me like a sucker punch, knocking the breath from my lungs. For a moment, the room seemed to fall into absolute silence, except for the distant hum of traffic beyond the suburban street. "I'm sorry, what?" I asked, my voice dry, barely above a whisper. Sitting beside Ethan, Sophia, our younger sister, twirled a strand of her glossy brown hair around one finger, a small satisfied smirk playing on her lips. "You heard him, Riley. Mom and Dad made their decision. You're not getting anything." I turned to Mom, searching for some kind of hesitation, a flicker of guilt, even a shadow of discomfort. But she simply placed her fork down on her plate, her expression unreadable. Dad sighed, his voice infuriatingly calm. "You have to understand, Riley. You've done well for yourself. You don't need this." Ethan and Sophia, on the other hand, are still finding their way. "Your mother and I just want to make sure they have a stable future." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. A stable future, funded by me. No one responded. They couldn't. Because they knew I was right. I was the one who had helped pay off the mortgage when they were struggling. I had covered Sophia's tuition every time she impulsively changed her major. I was the one they called when Ethan's car broke down, when the bills piled up, when there was any financial crisis to be solved. And now, after everything, they were telling me I was getting nothing. Anger boiled in my veins, but underneath it all, something deeper settled into my chest. Betrayal. I forced myself to breathe, though my chest felt tight, like a rope was slowly being pulled around my ribs. The betrayal burned, raw and unbearable. Yet here they were, my own family, staring at me as if I was the unreasonable one. I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice dangerously steady. "After years of paying your mortgage, after covering Sophia's tuition every time she switched majors, after bailing Ethan out of his endless messes, you're telling me I don't deserve a dime? That I'm not even worth considering?" Mom let out an exaggerated sigh, shaking her head in exasperation. "This is exactly why we didn't want to tell you," she said, as if I were a petulant child throwing a tantrum. "You always bring things back to money, Riley. It's never about family with you." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. "Not about family," I repeated, shaking my head in disbelief. "Every sacrifice I made was for this family. Every canceled vacation, every late-night call to wire money, every time I put my own life on hold so you could live yours more comfortably. And now you're telling me I'm the one who doesn't care." Ethan scoffed, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed smugly. "No one forced you to help," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You just liked playing the hero." Sophia smirked, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the table. "Or maybe," she mused, "you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would finally love you as much as they love us." The words cut deeper than I could have ever prepared for. A wound I had long tried to ignore was suddenly ripped open, bleeding out in front of me for everyone to see. But the worst part, Mom and Dad said nothing. They didn't reprimand her, didn't scold her for being cruel. They just sat there, staring at me with the same blank expressions, as if her words held even a shred of truth. Something inside me snapped. The years of silent endurance, of bending over backward to prove my worth, of desperately hoping to be seen, all of it shattered. I pushed my chair back abruptly. The screech of wood against tile cutting through the tense silence. "You're right, Ethan," I said, my voice cold and unwavering. "No one forced me. And from today onward, no one can guilt me into being this family's ATM either." Mom gasped. Dad's mouth parted slightly, as if he was about to object, but I was done listening. I grabbed my coat from the hallway, my movements swift, controlled, final. As I reached the door, I hesitated for only a moment, looking back one last time. The scent of baked garlic and marinara still hung in the air, a cruel reminder of what I had foolishly believed would be a comforting family dinner. Instead, I had been ambushed, humiliated, discarded. Without another word, I walked out, the front door slamming shut behind me, and just like that, I was free. The cold night air hit me as soon as I stepped outside, sharp and biting against my flushed skin. My heart pounded violently, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my car keys. I had always imagined that if I ever walked away from my family, it would be with dignity, with a composed farewell. Instead, I had stormed out like a fugitive, escaping a crime scene. As I slid into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut, a heavy silence wrapped around me. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My vision blurred for a moment, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on me. I had just walked away from my family. No, I had just freed myself from them. The drive back to my downtown apartment was a blur. The city lights flickered past, indifferent to the storm raging inside me. My family had used me, drained me, discarded me when I was no longer convenient. And yet, deep in my chest, a small, twisted part of me still ached for them. I unlocked my door and stepped inside. The familiar warmth of my home, doing little to comfort me. It felt different now, like something had shifted permanently. I dropped my coat on the couch and grabbed my phone, opening my banking app. My stomach churned as I scrolled through the automated payments. $1,800, parents' mortgage, $600, utilities, $450, miscellaneous, family help, transfers. Each line item stared back at me like an accusation. How many sacrifices had I made in silence? How many nights had I stayed up late, juggling spreadsheets, shifting my own finances, just to make sure they were comfortable? Not anymore. My thumb hovered over the cancellation button. For a fleeting second, guilt twisted in my gut, my mother's voice echoing in my mind. Family sticks together, Riley. Family sacrifices. But tonight had proven that those rules only applied when I was the one doing the sacrificing. I pressed cancel on the mortgage payment. One click, gone. Another tap, utilities, gone. One by one, the payments vanished, each confirmation message flashing like a quiet act of defiance. For the first time in years, I was no longer their safety net, no longer their ATM. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, a strange sense of liberation settling into my chest. I had spent my entire life believing that my worth was tied to what I could provide for them, that if I just gave enough, they would finally love me the way I had always longed for. But tonight, I had finally learned the truth. They would never love me that way, and I was done trying to earn it. For the first time in years, my paycheck belonged solely to me. No mortgage payments drained from my account. No quiet bank transfers labeled family help at the end of each month. It should have felt like victory, like relief. But instead, it felt like war. The calls started the next morning. First, my mother, then my father, then Ethan and Sophia, their numbers lighting up my phone in relentless succession. I ignored them all. I wasn't ready. I didn't need to hear their excuses, their guilt-tripping, their demands for an explanation. Then the voicemail came. I stared at the notification for a long moment before pressing play. "Riley, stop being so dramatic." Mom's voice snapped through the speaker, irritation laced with practiced guilt. "We are your family. You don't just cut family off like this. Call me back." A bitter laugh escaped me. Family. They hadn't spoken of family when they erased me from their will. Hadn't thought about family when they dismissed my years of sacrifices. as if they were insignificant. Now that their financial safety net had vanished, now family suddenly mattered. I deleted the voicemail. Days passed, then weeks. The calls didn't stop, only grew more desperate. Their messages oscillated between anger and manipulation. One day, my father's voice was measured and stern. "You're making a mistake, Riley. This is not how a daughter behaves." The next, Sophia's, was dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, congratulations, I guess. Hope your extra money keeps you warm at night, since you clearly don't need a family anymore." I blocked them all, and for the first time in my life, there was silence. Real, uninterrupted silence. No middle-of-the-night calls about overdue bills. No demands disguised as casual requests. No pressure to be their financial savior. At first, it was unsettling. Then it became intoxicating. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, volunteering for extra projects, anything to fill the space their absence left behind. Without the weight of their constant needs, I felt lighter, more in control. But peace was never something my family granted easily. The text arrived 3 weeks later, short and direct. "Family meeting tonight. You owe it to us to be there." I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. I didn't owe them anything. But a small, stubborn part of me wanted to go. Not out of obligation, but out of curiosity. Would they finally acknowledge their mistakes? Would they apologize? I typed a single word in response: "Fine." Pulling into my parents' driveway that evening felt surreal. The house, once a place of warmth and familiarity, now loomed before me like an unwelcoming fortress. Ethan's flashy sports car was parked beside Sophia's ridiculously overpriced SUV, matching symbols of entitlement I had unknowingly funded for years. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Why did I come? I could have ignored the message, could have let them sit in their disappointment, let them feel the absence of the financial safety net they had so carelessly discarded. But deep down, a part of me still clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, they had finally realized the weight of their actions. I exhaled sharply, stepping out of the car. The front door opened before I even knocked. Mom stood there, her smile forced, stretched too tight over barely concealed irritation. "Riley, glad you decided to come," she said stiffly, ushering me inside. "Your Aunt Daisy is here too." That stopped me short. Aunt Daisy rarely involved herself in family matters, especially not ones like this. But there she was, sitting quietly in the corner of the living room, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her eyes met mine, warm with sympathy, yet wary. Why was she here? I barely had time to process before Ethan and Sophia entered, both wearing identical expressions of resentment. Dad cleared his throat, his voice measured, like he was speaking to a business associate rather than his own daughter. "We called this meeting to clear the air, Riley," he began. "Your mother and I thought you'd come to your senses by now, but obviously we were mistaken." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. "Come to my senses," I echoed, shaking my head. "You cut me out completely after everything I've done for you. Every mortgage payment, every tuition check, and now you expect me to be the one who sees reason." Mom rolled her eyes, exasperated. "You helped, sure, but that was your responsibility as the oldest. Ethan and Sophia deserve stability. It's not our fault you chose work over family." Heat flared in my chest. "I chose work over family?" I repeated, incredulous. "I built my career because you needed my money. I sacrificed vacations, friendships, relationships, so you could pretend everything was fine." Ethan scoffed. "Oh, spare us the dramatics. No one asked for your pity or your charity." Sophia smirked, crossing her arms. "That's right. Maybe if you weren't so busy trying to be the family savior, you'd actually have a life of your own by now." The room fell silent. Aunt Daisy shifted uncomfortably, but she said nothing. Neither did my parents. They just sat there, faces blank, eyes avoiding mine. And in that moment, I understood. They would never see me as anything other than a resource, never value me beyond what I could provide. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. "You know what? You're right," I said coldly. "It was my mistake to believe I mattered here. I won't make that mistake again. As I reached the door, my father's voice cut through the silence. If you walk out now, Riley, don't expect to be welcome back. I froze, my hand clenched around the doorknob. A lifetime of memories, of scraped knees and bedtime stories, of whispered I love yous and childhood laughter, flashed through my mind. Then I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. That's fine, I replied, voice unwavering. I've never felt welcome here anyway. And with that, I walked out, for the last time. This story highlights that a person's worth is not measured by their sacrifices. If a relationship only exists because of what you give, it's not love, it's exploitation. True love and respect come without conditions, and a real family values you for who you are, not just what you provide. Sometimes, letting go is the only path to freedom, because not everyone related to you by blood deserves a place in your life. Those who rely on you the most will never be grateful, only resentful when you stop giving. But in the end, the ones truly afraid of losing the relationship aren't you, it's them. They once believed you couldn't live without them, but in reality, they were the ones who couldn't live without you. Remember, you don't need anyone's approval to live a happy life. Letting go is not selfish, it's self-respect. If you enjoy deep, emotional, and meaningful stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new update. Your support is the motivation that drives us to keep bringing you powerful stories. Once again, thank you for being here, and see you in the next story.